Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me. This is Jennifer with Deadline Crime and Lifestyle. So today I was going through some old footage and I wanted to share with you something that I think a lot of us are questioning. DA Rourke says justice was served years ago in the Chris Watts case, but many still debate this. Listen to a clip today, and it caught my attention that Rourke said during court, he questioned why Chris Watts did what he did. Now, this was a press conference. These happen with the media after sentencing. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Please subscribe. You're going to get some insider info from a former journalist here who worked in a newsroom, outside the newsroom, the assignment desk, the web department, out in the field, shooting footage, editing footage, pretty much everything you can do. Most of us, we've all done it. So you're going to get some background from me on that in regards to all cases. But so we have a big court appearance, right? Sorry, my dog's playing with the toy if you hear a squeaky noise. Back in 2018. And then following that, the DA, any DA, it doesn't matter what city you're in, they usually gather the media at a certain time, 4 o'clock, let's say. I'm going to give you a statement after court is over, and here's my reaction, because, you know, you always want more, right? I mean, we just had the sentencing, but yet people always want more. I'm listening to this soundbite and I'm thinking, I really don't remember DA Rourke turning around and asking Chris, why did you do this? And in that soundbite, we hear him say that he did that. So what I want to do is play this soundbite. Then I want to listen to District Attorney Rourke sentencing day. And let's see, am I missing something? Because I don't recall him turning around and asking Chris why he did what he did. There's also a part in this where he says he gave the opportunity to, I believe, Chris's attorney to give an answer as to what he did. Was this done in private? I don't know. I guess the only people that may know that are Shanann's family and Chris's family, which I don't have the answer to that. But let's take a listen to this soundbite. Just curious, am I missing something?
This was more than served this morning. The defendant is now headed exactly where he belongs, which is a life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole. I don't think he will ever tell us. I don't think he will give an honest assessment of why he did what he did, how he did what he did. I intentionally called upon him to see if he would answer those questions in the courtroom this morning. Both his mother and through their attorney, his father, said that they hope that he will be honest and come clean someday and give us an account of what happened, because I think, like I said this morning, those are the questions that will always haunt anyone who was involved in the investigation, and I don't think that there is ever going to be a satisfactory answer for anyone, not the least of which is the Rourke family. So to say that this was anything other than a deliberate, intentional killing is inaccurate, to say the least. From our perspective, justice was more...
Now, I don't think anyone's denying Chris Watts had responsibility in this case. I think what people are speculating is that other people are responsible in the deaths of 4 human beings. So I would guarantee, I would put money on it, guys, that DA Rourke probably receives an email every day on this case asking questions. people who are starting to hear about the case for the first time, and they're like, hey, justice wasn't served. Well, I'm going to tell you, you'll never get an answer from him. I've reached out several times. I've reached out to Frederick, Colorado. I've reached out to the CBI and FBI's public relations folks and have not heard anything, except for you need to reach out to the district attorney's office, which I have. Reached out to the attorney general's office, which there's a video on my page where I go over that. Did that earlier this year. And they told me that because DA Rourke is an elected official, they do not make comment on state cases. They don't get involved, is pretty much what I've been told. And I said, but what if the DA isn't answering me? And I was pretty much in a nutshell told there's really nothing we can do because he's an elected official. So I'm going to play this one more time. And I just don't recall him asking Chris outright where he says, I called upon him to tell me why he did it. I don't recall, but we're going to listen to it and we're going to play it. We're going to play this one more time.
This morning, the defendant is now headed to justice was more than served this morning. The defendant is now headed exactly where he belongs, which is a life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole. I don't think he will ever tell us. I don't think he will give an honest assessment of why he did what he did, how he did what he did. I intentionally called upon him to see if he would answer those questions in the courtroom this morning. Both his mother and through their attorney, his father, said that they hope that he will be honest and come clean someday. And
now that is a true statement. And then we know Chris Watts wrote a book with an author and collaborated, Sherilyn Cadle, where he allegedly tells her how he did it and why he did it. If you go into my video selection in the Watch channel, you will see I do a review on this book, and we have a couple chapters left to cover. Now, I pose this question to you in chat. Feel free to chime in. Do you feel justice was served? Many people don't. So also, just to end this live stream, I want to listen to the DA at the sentencing hearing. And let's listen. Am I missing a part? Am I missing where I don't remember a moment where he turns to Chris and says, why did you do this? Why? Personally, I expected him to be a lot more aggressive in his delivery in the courtroom. Chris Watts will never tell the truth about anything. Some people believe he's told partial truths, but we won't know. I do want to share with you, while I have your attention, guys, there is a video I did called Layered Voice Analysis, where I take Chris Watts's CBI interview that he did in the Weld County Jail, and I work with a private investigator named TJ Ward, and we go over some of the things Chris talks about in his confession, and you can see where he is lying and where he is telling the truth. So check that out in my playlist. Here we go. Let's add this to the stage and let's have a listen. I just got to be honest, I don't recall him asking Chris the question, why did you do it? So let's have a listen. Maybe I'm missing a part.
Your Honor, there are no words to adequately describe the unimaginable tragedy that brings us before this court today. By my comments, I'm not even going to try to express the horror, the pain, or the suffering that the defendant has caused to these families, to this community, and to all who were a part of this investigation. However, I do want to spend a few minutes sharing with the court the details of the crime as so far you've only had an opportunity to review the affidavit and a few facts here and there that have been offered to the court in the motions and pleadings that have been filed. The questions that have screamed out to anyone who will listen since August 13th of 2018 are why and how. Why did this have to happen? How could a seemingly normal husband and father annihilate his entire family? For what? These are the questions that only one individual in this courtroom or on this planet knows the answers to. I fully expect we will not receive the answers to these questions today, nor will we at any point in the future. I don't expect that he will ever tell the truth about what truly happened or why. Even if he did, there is no rational way that any human being could find those answers acceptable responses.
I am just going to pause this for a moment. You say you remember him looking at Chris Watts. I'm kind of waiting for that moment here. I don't recall it. I kind of hear him rhetorically ask the question, why did this happen and how did it happen? But do I feel it would have been more impactful to turn around and look at Chris in the face and say, why did you do this? Absolutely. Okay, we'll continue.
Such horrific questions. The best we can do is try to piece together some kind of understanding from the evidence that is available to us. And the evidence tells us this: the defendant coldly and deliberately ended 4 lives, not in a fit of rage, not by way of accident, but in a calculated and sickening manner. Shanann was 34 years old. She had married the defendant in November of 2012. Over the weekend leading up to August 13th, she had been at a work conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and returned home in the early morning hours of August 13th. We know that she got home about 1:45 in the morning. The doorbell camera on their home shows her arriving back home from the airport. Shortly thereafter, at least according to the defendant, they had what he referred to as an emotional conversation about the state of their marriage and about what their lives would look like going forward. What was said during that emotional conversation, only he knows. What we do know is that shortly after that, the defendant strangled her to death with his own hands.
And I will pause there and ask you guys, do you personally think there was ever a conversation between Shanann and Chris that morning when she got home? Or do you think she came in the house and was ambushed by more than one person? Or do you think Shanann came home and Chris pretended to be sleeping, waited for her to fall asleep, and then attacked her? Feel free to share in the comments what your theory is, and we will continue listening to DA Rourke.
We know that he slowly took her life the morning of August 13th. We know that this was not done in an uncontrolled, vengeful manner that he tried to describe to agents from CBI and the FBI. If that were the case, you would expect to see vicious, horrible bruising about her neck, shoulders, and face. You would expect to see the hyoid bone in her neck broken. You would expect to see some kind of defensive wounds on his body as she struggled and fought for her own life. None of those are present. The only injuries.
Now, I will pause and ask you guys your thoughts. Some people believe during the porch interview, you can see those marks very clearly on his neck. I'm happy to pull those up, but I think we've already seen those photos before. So are those defense wounds, or are they just marks from Chris, I don't know, grabbing at his neck during the interrogation, something that Agent Coder noticed early on during questioning with Chris as he continued to touch his neck during questioning. And He left the room and told Tammy Lee, "I believe Chris may have strangled her. He keeps touching his neck."
That were on Shanann's body were one set of finger or bruising, what appeared to be fingernail or finger mark bruising to the right side of her neck. We know that our experts will tell us that it takes 2 to 4 minutes to strangle someone to death manually with their own hands. The horror that she felt as the man that she loved wrapped his hands around her throat and choked the life out of her must have been unimaginable. Even worse, what must Bella, age 4, and Celeste, age 3, must have experienced or thought as their father, the one man on this planet who was supposed to nurture and protect them, was snuffing out their lives. They both died from smothering. Let me say that again. The man seated to my right smothered his daughters. Why? Imagine the horror in Bella's mind as her father took her last breaths away. Your Honor, understand very clearly, Bella fought back for her life. The frenulum, the connective tissue between her upper lip and her gum, had a centimeter and a half laceration. She bit her tongue multiple times before she died. She fought back for her life as her father smothered her. Celeste had no such injuries. In fact, she had no external injuries at all. But according to the medical examiner, she was smothered nonetheless. The defendant then methodically and calmly loaded their bodies into his work truck, not in a hasty or disorganized way. He was seen from the neighbor's doorbell camera, backing his truck into the driveway, going back and forth into the house and back out to the truck 3 different times, 1 time for each of their bodies. He then drove them away from their family home 1 final time, intent on hiding any evidence of the crimes that he had just committed. In one final sign of callousness for his wife, his daughters, and their unborn son and their remains, he drove them to a location that he thought no one would ever find them, to one of the oil tank batteries with which he was so familiar. He knew this was safe. He had texted a coworker the night before saying, "I'll head out to that site. I'll take care of it." He had carefully ensured that he would be alone in the middle of the plains to secrete away the remains of his family in a place that he hoped they would never be found. In one final measure of disrespect for the family he once had, he ensured that they would not be together, even in death, or so he thought. He disposed of them in different locations. He buried Shanann and Nico in a shallow grave away from the oil tanks. Bella and Celeste were thrown away in the oil tanks at this facility. Different tanks, so these little girls wouldn't be together in death. Imagine this, Your Honor. This defendant took those little girls and put them through a hatch at the top of an oil tank, 8 inches in diameter. Bella had scratches on her left buttocks from being shoved through this hole. A tuft of blonde hair was found on the edge of one of these hatches. The defendant told investigators that Bella's tank seemed emptier than CC's because of the sound that the splashes made. These were his daughters. Significantly, when his coworkers arrived at the tank battery later that morning, to a person, they all described him as acting completely normally. It was a normal workday, even while his daughters sank in the oil and water not far away from him. And then his efforts at deception truly began. We've all seen the emotionless interviews that the defendant gives to the local media, asking for help in locating his family. We watched as he claimed that the house was empty without them, and that he hoped that they were somewhere safe, and that he just wanted them to come home. He told investigators that they were at home sleeping when he left for work that morning, and that Shanann had told him that she was taking the girls to a friend's house for the day. What is striking about this case, Your Honor, beyond the horrors that I've already
Now, I'm still not seeing a part where he turns to Chris and asks him why. Going into the comments here, Christine Brown says, plea deal terms absolutely should include why, how, and investigated to be truthful, not what happened here. 100% agree, Christine. Although you don't want to reward scum like this, but maybe in exchange for telling the truth, he could have an extra pillow or something. I don't know, extra yard time once a year, an extra hour or something. DA arrogant, he doesn't deny it. Go watch his TED speech. He calls himself arrogant. Arrogant DA Rourke dropped the ball. He got a conviction and ran. No NK, no Jim. He's a loser DA. Yes, I absolutely get your point. People make false confessions all of the time, especially someone like Chris, who kind of follows whatever people tell him to do. He is notorious for doing exactly what he's told to do. Now, in all of our books, whether he physically did it or not, he allowed it to happen. Therefore, you are guilty of the crime, whether you physically did it or not. You allowed it to happen and you helped plan it. However, are more people involved? We are going to continue and listen.
described to you is the number of collateral victims that he created by his actions. While he stood in front of TV cameras asking for the safe return of his family, scores of law enforcement officers, neighbors, friends, and family scoured the area, fretted for their safe return. They texted him begging for any information and sending him their best wishes, all the while he hid what he had done. The list of indirect victims does not end there. Think of the firefighters and the Colorado State Patrol hazmat experts who had to don protective suits and who were called upon to pull Bella and Celeste out of those oil tanks. Or the coroner employees who had to conduct these autopsies. Or the victim assistants who frantically attempted to ease the suffering of those affected. All of this, Your Honor, for what? Why? Why did this have to happen? His motive was simple, Your Honor. He had a desire for a fresh start, to begin a relationship with a new love that overpowered all decency and feelings for his wife, his daughters, and unborn son.
Now, maybe there is where DA Rourke in the previous speech said that he asked that question. However, I heard him say, Judge, why? Not Chris, why? I think it would have been so impactful to just turn, look at Chris, because we all know Chris hates confrontation. He hates people thinking negatively about him. And gosh, do I wish that, I don't know if he was just emotionally drained from the case, but gosh, do I wish he would have just turned to him and said, why did you do this? Or why did you let it happen?
While Shanann texted the defendant over and over again in the days and weeks leading up to her death, attempting to save her marriage, the defendant secreted pictures of his girlfriend into his phone and texted her at all hours of the night. While Shanann sent the defendant self-help and relationship counseling books, one of which, ironically enough, was thrown in the garbage. He was searching the internet for secluded vacation spots to take his new love in researching jewelry. And while Shanann took the girls to visit family in North Carolina, the defendant went to car museums in the sand dunes with his new girlfriend. The stark contrast between the subjects of their internet and text content is absolutely stunning. Even the morning after he killed them and disposed of their bodies, he made several phone calls. One was to the school where the girls were supposed to start, telling the school that the girls would not be coming to school anymore, that they were being unenrolled, presumably to give him some more time before law enforcement notification about them going missing. He contacted a realtor to start discussing the selling of his house, and he texted with his girlfriend about their future. None of this answers the questions of why, however. If he was this happy and wanted a new start, get a divorce. You don't annihilate your family and throw them away like garbage. Why did Nico, Celeste, Bella, and Shanann have to lose their lives in order for him to get what he wanted? Your Honor, justice demands the maximum sentence under the agreement reached by the parties. As you will recall, the agreement calls for life sentences as to Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, and all of those to run consecutively to one another. It also calls for the count of unlawful termination of a pregnancy as to Nico to run consecutively to counts 1, 2, and 3. I would suggest that the extreme aggravation present in the defendant's conduct and in the efforts that I have described mandate that the sentences for counts 7, 8, and 9, the tampering with a deceased human body, each be the maximum of 12 years, and that those sentences run consecutively to one another. It is very clear that each of these acts, that these were not the subject of one act, but each oil tank that he walked up with his daughter's bodies and the hole that he dug for his wife and unborn son mandate a mandatory consecutive sentence. It's been alluded to this morning, but the defendant was certainly eligible for the death penalty in this case under the existing law in the state of Colorado. As you heard, Shanann's family strongly opposed my office seeking the death penalty and being bound to the criminal justice system for the next several decades. That's in large part, as you've heard, why we have reached the agreement that we have. 4 lives were lost at the hands of the defendant on August 13th for reasons that we will never fully understand, nor will we know. In the end, the Rourke family was much more merciful towards him than he was towards his wife, his daughters, and his unborn son. Prison for the remainder of his life is exactly where he belongs for murdering his entire family. Thank you.
Are you seeking 91 days to file a request for restitution?
All right, guys. So I guess, yes, he did say out loud, Chris, why did you do it? But I don't feel the question itself was directed at Chris in the way it really should have. If you are free this evening, I am going to probably go live and finish up my series of Christopher Watts letters to Christopher. I do want to preview this video before I go for you. Probably will go live definitely after 8:30 p.m. Eastern time.
The biggest
tonight.
mistake women make after turning 50, they don't wear eyeliner.
This is the video I'm talking about that I did where we analyze Chris Watts' audio. So if you have a moment, go check that out. Yes, I agree with you. Some kind of cover-up's going on. Here's a little bit of that video. If you have the time, check it out, and I will see you guys next time.
To Sugarloaf Parkway.
Do some analysis on the Chris Watts audio. So I cannot wait to see the technology that TJ has and to see what it can do.
They just changed this program. That's crazy.
Talk to a lawyer. I mean, we can record it, but before I distribute it anywhere to make sure there's no liability.
And probably suspenders is a good spot.
Oh, look at that. That's cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Here's the voice analysis. Here's the screen. Oh yeah, if I got their name, address, date of birth, social security number, I'll find every account they got in the country. This is a layered voice analysis, 6.50. This was developed by a firm in Damascus in Israel. It's been around now for about 23 years. I've been licensed on it since 2004. It's a very unique system that works off the voice, and I can tell you if you're being truthful with something. It monitors risk stress, global reaction, global stress, congenital stress, emotional stress, your thinking level, and whether you're telling the truth. I can see all that when I'm running a test. I can also see if what you're basically thinking and what you're going to say. With my next question, your last answer. The goodness of this, and now it has AI in it, and it's about 95% accurate. I don't have to touch you. I can do it by your voice, by sitting in front of you. I can do it by recording or over the phone. And I can tell you if you're lying or hiding something.
We are going to, I'm sure you're familiar, run the audio of Chris Watts from his Wisconsin interview. TJ has everything set up for us. We're going to kind of just rock over his shoulder.
Strangulation is more of like a, I don't know, passionate type thing. I'm just like, I like it passionate.
Because